Welcome back to Killershrewfan Spooktacular Toy Reviews. A common issue you'll hear with dinosaurs is how frequently these animals are equated to quote-unquote movie monsters, and how the modern mainstream media does little to alter this misconception that's been ingrained in the public eye. In defense of the modern-day blockbusters that treat their dinosaurs as action stars and villains, dinosaurs have been a key niche of the creature feature practically since the advent of film. And I owe much of my fascination with dinosaurs to the movies that painted them as terrifying monsters that constantly fought tooth and claw while preying on hapless human characters. Because of that, I rarely, if ever, mind adding dinosaurs to my collection that look a bit monstrous. And with its one dead eye and exaggerated features, you can't get much more monstrous than the W-Dragon Giganotosaurus. This piece was revealed in the summer of 2020 and appears to take direct inspiration from the T-Rex killing Giga in Dino Crisis. When I first saw it, I felt drawn to its rich palette, but the recent and continuous surplus of Giganotosaurus figures combined with the fact that I never played Dino Crisis made this figure much less of a priority for me. That and the price tag was a bit hard to swallow. However, when the chance came to get it secondhand from a fellow collector for cheap, I leapt at the opportunity, and now that I finally have this in my collection, I can safely say that I am glad I did. It is indeed a handsome piece, and I am excited to finally be talking about it on the channel. So to start things off, let's talk about the included base. You can see that it's a rocky surface with footprints to indicate the placement, and you do have a single small peg to hold the figure in place. The underside is a nice felt material to prevent scratching to your display shelves, and the base itself, which I think gives it a more premium feel. The color is a dirty beige, and all the dark washes help sell that rocky texture. Overall, not a bad base, although I have noticed it can be a bit hit and miss when it comes to supporting the figure. Placing the Giga on the base is a simple matter of guiding the peg into the hole on the left foot, and you can see that once it's in there, it does stay fairly well attached. However, I noticed that this attachment does lead to slight warping and even balance issues. I hate that! Isn't that the point of a base? You know, to keep your figure from falling over time? I found that actually bracing the feet against the peg, like so, is a much better option. It keeps the figure surprisingly well balanced and stable without causing any unnecessary bending. But now, onto the figure itself. The head on this Giganotosaurus is a real doozy. For one thing, it's the area of the sculpt that seems to contain the most finely sculpted detail in the form of crisp scale work of varying sizes. You can also see that the head is adorned in all these intimidating spiny growths that really give the beast a very dragony appearance. The teeth are individually sculpted, why wouldn't they be, and come in various lengths while sporting some lovely stained colors. The jaw is articulated and opens to reveal a nice glossy tongue and shining cheeks that have been painted a dark pink and red color. I will say though, the articulation is a bit shoddy on mine, as the jaw doesn't want to stay closed. It will if I push it, but otherwise it is very loose, so just something to be aware of should you decide to pursue this figure. Even so, it doesn't appear the jaw ever really closes fully, so the figure always appears to have this snarling look to it, which, depending on how you look at it, could be a negative or a positive. So yes, a very interesting sculpture on the head here, yet despite the more exaggerated elements, the actual shape itself doesn't feel too far off the mark when you look at a real Giganotosaurus skull. And it stands to be said that the nasals, lacrimals, and parietals of the Giganotosaurus skull are quite rugose in appearance, which seems to indicate some form of keratinous growth on those areas of the head. So perhaps those spiky growths, though a bit exaggerated, may not be too far off the mark. Although, I am looking forward to reading some spirited responses to this assertion in the comments below. All of that being said, perhaps the most intriguing element of this piece, and what really gives it that frightening appearance, would be the decision to give this Giganotosaurus one dead eye. The functioning eye is just a neon green with a cat pupil, but when you look at the left side of the figure, you'll see that ghostly eye picked out by pink scars boring into your skull. It's rare that you see a dinosaur figure containing some sort of injury, and I know this one is based off of a game, but it still feels largely unique in the model world. Yet at the same time, it seems completely reasonable for a dinosaur to sport such a feature, so I can appreciate it for that fact alone. Plus, it really does give the piece a haunting quality, and it is painted to perfection. Moving down the body, you can see the neck also sports those crocodilian scoots that gradually taper off as you reach the midsection. The torso features a mix of crosshatch scaling and leathery skin, as well as smaller armor scales that run down the flank. The further down the figure you get, the scaling detail kind of falls away and is completely replaced by that leathery crosshatch skin. The muscle tones all look quite nice, and I'm a huge fan of the sagging wrinkle work and tension lines around the gut, shoulders, and throat of this thing. It all looks very well done. The legs are quite beefy, with some very muscular thighs and calves. There's also some great folds of skin on the kneecap and around the ankles as the legs bend and the leathery skin buckles in on itself. The feet themselves feature some nice plate scaling along the backs of the toes, and you can see that the rest of the feet have been treated with some smaller reticular scale work. I also love the treatment of the claws. Something about the color and sheen really works for me. The arms are appropriately small for Giganotosaurus, but feature some nice musculature, and the finger claws got the same nice treatment as the toe claws. Unfortunately, you have got some seam lines here, but given the size of the arms, it certainly isn't a big distracting feature by any means. As far as the pose goes, you can see this Giga is mid-stride, head held low, which helps emphasize the slightly raised dorsum seen in Giganotosaurus skeletons. It feels active, yet not extreme, and it really injects the model with an aggressive and imposing appearance. Now for my favorite aspect of this figure, the color scheme. You heard me already say it's a very rich palette with a mix of purples, oranges, and cream. A lot like my lighting here. There's also plenty of darker washes to really make all of that sculptural detail pop. It's a paint job you wouldn't think would work, but the colors are so vibrant and the transition is handled well with a mix of fades and striping that it really creates a unique and eye-catching display. So yes, the figure has a very interesting sculpt and bold color scheme working for it, but then we come to its biggest problem: the size. Coming in at around 14.75 inches or 37.5 centimeters long in a straight measurement, and standing in at around 4.5 inches tall or 11.75 centimeters without the base, the figure isn't necessarily small, but the issue is it just isn't big enough. I mean, if you take the high-end estimate of Giganotosaurus into consideration, which is about 43 feet, it does come in around that 135 scale range. But there you can see it next to the W-Dragon Spinosaurus, and it just looks tiny. Don't believe me? Think that's forced perspective? Here's another angle. Yeah, he looks dinky next to that Spino. And this is also true when you compare it to the Myuu Alpha Tyrannosaurus Rex, and especially when you put it next to the Myuu Giganotosaurus Behemoth. It's sad because based on what I have seen, this is actually the closest you can currently get to owning a model based on the big bad Giganotosaurus of Jurassic World Dominion. But if you wanted to make a display with all of the Jurassic villains, this one just looks too small to hang, especially if we take the massive size of the Giganotosaurus of Dominion into consideration. That and its small stature really makes you question that high price tag. The cheapest I could find this model was for around $90+, which was around the same price you could get that massive Spinosaurus model for. I guess the paint job might be a little more complex. It still comes with a base and it does feature an articulated jaw, but $90+ for something this small? I mean, you can get that massive Myuu Giga for less than that. I suppose the material could be playing a big role in all of this, but if you ask me, the price really cripples the overall draw of this piece. Like I said, I only ended up getting it because a fellow collector was letting it go at a discount. I think I only paid $60 or so, which seems a much more fair price to me. Alright, for a couple more size comparisons, here it is with the Eofauna Giganotosaurus for a more quote-unquote standard Giga comparison, and you can see these guys are roughly the same height and length, but the W-Dragon does have more bulk, higher levels of sculpted detail, and a more intricate paint job. So the price hike between the two is much easier to swallow here. And as a final comparison, here it is with the massive W-Dragon Giraffatitan, which no, will not fit in frame, but you don't need to see the whole figure to know it absolutely dwarfs this Giga. And that was the W-Dragon Giganotosaurus. Overall, I am quite happy to have this piece in my collection. It's a very unique and enjoyable design, and I really do love that they gave it that scarred over eye. That really gives it some extra character that I appreciate. Really, the only deterrent with this figure would be its small size compared to similarly styled figures, and the higher price tag. That being said, I have noticed this figure is becoming harder and harder to find at the usual retailers, and that may be due in large part to the fact that W-Dragon now officially holds the license for Jurassic products and is now focusing entirely on those pieces. With that in mind, paying for this figure at its higher price point now may be the way to go in order to avoid paying even more for it down the line. As for me, it was certainly a pleasant surprise and managed to stand out amongst my ever-growing Giga gang. I dig this dino and will certainly be holding on to it for as long as I can. But as always, I want to know what you guys think of this figure. Do you own it yet? Are you planning to pick it up? And what is your favorite Giganotosaurus model out there? Leave all of your thoughts in the comments section below. Thank you for tuning into today's Spooktacular review, and I hope to see you again for the next one. Until then, take care out there, and goodbye.